This wasn't an act of hate against the state or shame of being white. This is like an act of love and empathy for people and their suffering.
4 people have been charged with criminal damage over the toppling of a statue of a slave trader in Bristol.
My name is Rianne, and I brought one of the ropes to pull down Colston. When we reach the statue, there's a group of people hurling eggs, and it's covered up in this black shroud. There's 2 men in front of us, one black man, one white man. And the white man saying, "Take the cover off of him, we need to see him, like demanding everybody take this cover off him." And the black guy's like, please don't take the cover off him, I can't look that man in the eyes today. And that moment was really like a solidifying moment. It was like, well, okay, we're doing this now. Just feel it, like, it always gets me, that moment.
And I think at that point you hear the shout, which is "Colston must fall." There was already like a couple of people on the statue, and they were struggling to get to the top, and I was like, well, I can do this. So I jump on the statue, I climb up the back of Colston, I get on the back of his shoulders and get around his head.
I'll never ever forget that feeling of having the rope in my hands, and you feel it rock once and rock backwards, and you knew the next time that it rocked towards you that it was going to fall down, and then just the elation of everybody running in and hitting with their skateboards.
My name's Linford. I was here the day that the Colston statue came down and ended up over here, going into the river. Pushing it down there, seeing everyone get involved. No one was against it. People took it in turns. People helped out. People were suggesting how to do it. And yeah, it was amazing to see it sink.
The police started circulating people as wanted pretty soon after the toppling, and there were various photographs that appeared in newspapers. 6 people received cautions, and the prosecution decided to prosecute 4 people.
Well, I think that is utterly disgraceful. Vandalism and disorder completely is unacceptable, and it's right, actually, the police follow up on that and make sure that justice is undertaken with those individuals that are responsible for such disorderly and lawless behaviour.
The government have sought to make this part of their cultural war, which they think plays to their voters. This isn't part of a cultural war. This is veneration of racism. This action clearly led to the government putting into the police and crime bill the idea that if you damage a monument, you get 10 years in prison. And so this huge significance that the government has placed on this case is quite astonishing.
I just remind you, still under caution, you don't have to say anything but may harm your defence if you do not mention when questions are put to you later on in court. Anything you do say will be given evidence. Okay, so now that you've had that further consultation, is there anything that you would like to say?
Yeah, so I accept that I helped cause the damage to the statue, but whether it is criminal or not, I think is up for debate.
Okay, fair enough.
Because of all the context around the statue and the fact that people have campaigned to take it down, and it is just an abhorrent offence to a lot of the population of Bristol.
Okay, so would it be fair of me to say your reason for doing so is that you found the statue to be an offensive thing, and that's the reason why you helped take it down? Is that fair? I don't want to put words in your mouth. If that's what, are you happy?
That is fair.
Okay.
It's a muddy process with lots of conflicting thoughts and feelings and doings. In one hand, we've made people reckon with their past, but in the other hand, we're still being prosecuted and being told that we're criminals.
The amount of petitions for that statue to come down, they were trying to move it, to change the plaque, to put it in the museum. Like, all of these avenues were tried in different petitions, and every single one of them just failed. It failed and failed and failed. And it's like, how many times can you try a legal route before you're like, I'm not doing this anymore?
If we wanted to put things on the landscape or in public places today, we wouldn't choose those. We don't choose those. So why should they stay for so long? They're not relevant, really, are they? But they are important to know the story. It's not about getting rid of them completely. People should know and understand, and also put it in some sort of context. It's about time we celebrated us as the people who worked and made this country what it is, not these elite people who are held in esteem, who were just destructive and anti-humane, really.
Many Bristolians were brought up to revere Edward Colston. I mean, that process was started in the Victorian period. It involved things like every year repeating the same myths and stories about Colston around Colston Day in the newspapers. And that was successful. I mean, it fixed Edward Colston in the minds of Bristolians as a great benefactor to the city. Certainly the Society of Merchant Venturers at Merchants Hall, where we are today, were very important in propagating and defending the legacy. But of course, it was central to the transatlantic slave trade as well.
This city is not in a place where we can sustain that Colston statue there anymore. Just what it's come to mean. And even if you could say it's just a statue, and the truth is, you could go around the city and you can find thousands of memorial to slavery and slavers. But that one was a particularly iconic one, right in the centre of the city. So that had to go. I don't think there's any question about that.
The context of the trial is interesting. I mean, as far as we can tell, the prosecution are just going to argue, very narrow perspective within the law that it was criminal damage. But it would be somewhat ridiculous to look at this case without looking at the wider context. And for me, that wider context is a century of dissent and protest and failure by civic authorities, by the organisations that defended Edward Colston.
The criminal damage that has been accused, the action that took place on the 7th of June 2020, which one was more criminal? Colston and his ilk's actions and the consequences of those actions, which still exist 400 years later, or just taking down a piece of metal in the city centre and chucking it in the water?
Right now, as I'm speaking, we have filed representations to the CPS regarding the valuation of the statue.
We've received a valuation report that suggests that prior to toppling, it was valued at around £6,000. Since toppling, it is now worth in excess of £200,000. And the idea that these four individuals are being prosecuted for increasing the value, as well as all the social benefits and the moment in social history, seems to me to be absurd. And it's a real lesson as to why the CPS should have reconsidered the prosecution in this case.
I'm hoping that maybe the council might take this as an opportunity to help us and say, no, we want to kind of not prosecute these people and retract any statements and stuff they've given to the police to help with the prosecution. But we don't know. We'll see how that goes.
It's a privilege to be a part of history. It's a privilege to be a part of what happened. And I wouldn't take back what I did. There's no way I would take back what I did.
I don't know how it got from 10 to 4. In fact, we don't know how it got from 10,000 to 10. And personally, I think that that is a travesty, really. And I don't see how it's possible to actually stack that up. I think it's ridiculous. I don't think that a jury in this country would be able to convict me as an African Caribbean person, the whole thing is political, but the fact there's no black people on trial is also massively political.
I couldn't have done it on my own. We couldn't have done it with two people. You know, the energy was there to do it, and it was a symbolic moment. I really hope that continuing on from here, we can start to see people really reckoning with the real change. That was the deal I made with myself anyway, before I took the rope. Am I willing to take the consequences of this, the legal consequences? And I decided I was, so here we are.